quite a few comments that people against it. And then my next question is, why? What don't you want to change? What I often hear is, I don't want to have any fees involved. And so I think a lot of it is fee driven. I don't want anything to change with fees. A lot has changed up there because we were, you know, when they did, what's the main falls? Rough Lock Falls, the main fall up there. It was, the vegetation was being killed. People were climbing all over the place. It was dangerous for some. They were jumping off and tearing down the banks. And they were out under the falls, and I, for one, and when I was going to university here, have been under that falls, and so it's partly my fault too. But we all were taking advantage of the beauty of what we had. And so putting up those walkways and everything up there and really help protect that. And so they're concerned about protecting it further. And they still they already own most of it. They're just looking at expanding that with taking some of the federal government and putting it into the state so that they can protect the whole thing as one. So, you know, I understand that there are concerns, but I would like to kind of dial down and say what really are their concerns. And I know that even the other night, one of the concerns was, you know, for the fishermen, for the anglers, that it would change for them, and would they have access, and would they have to pay, and so those are some of the issues. The city council, we have not taken a stance, and we really have very little. We have no authority in it, really. I mean, it's in the county. It's not within our jurisdiction. We can say one way or the other, yes or no, but from my position, I'm very concerned about preserving it for the future, not what it looks like today. Because if you've been up to Devil's Bathtub lately, that's chaos, and it used to be quiet. And so that's another area that's being overused because the secret is out. And so the secret is out with the canyon, and so we need to make sure that it's not torn up. Love to death is what they're saying. So I absolutely understand that there are some major concerns, and they'll be having some meetings, and I hope many in Spearfish show up and express their concerns. They're in January. They don't have times and dates set, but they will be advertised in the paper, and we can send out, put stuff on Facebook and on our website, and send some emails out to make sure that everyone knows. But yeah, I understand the concerns. But if we don't do something in 20 years, are we going to regret it? That's how I kind of look at it. Does that make sense?
Well, my personal feeling, what I'm hearing from the Spearfish people and Spearfish is it's beautiful the way it is. This fall, the college and stuff, they like to drive up without having, if it was going to be had to be lighted or something like that. But when it's not built, it's going to cost more money, definitely. The game fishing parks and that they're going to work together making those viewing stations, parking. And like you said, they've already stopped a lot of the people falling. So we've got to change it, but it's going to be at an expense. And Christy said, I didn't realize all the people in Spearfish wanted it. And that's why she was going along with this bill. She said, I'm going to have a second talk about that, but I did get a call from the guy that represents the game fishing parks. I think his first name is Hunter from the governor's.
From the governor's office, yes.
He's a great, and one of the representatives of one of the politicians said they had a whole bunch of petitions wanting to change. And I said, well, what are they? Well, she said, I gave them out names, and they were actually here, East River, with the local people. He says, it's not built by 6, that's really like it is. It's beautiful. And well, they did mention the money, the charges, what's going to change. But they're looking real good together, both the federal people and the state right now. And the game fishing parks, they're cutting back on their work. Things that they used to do with, I have a hatch, fish hatch. And we used to come out and do my inspection of my fish. Not anymore, I had to hire a guy to get. We're too busy.
Sure.
So this means that I hire some more new fishing parks guys. If they're going to be running it. So that's the main thing I'm saying. I mean, nobody wanted to do that fishing. They're not even here. And what I'm hearing in the real school investment, every house, I'm not having much. They won't rank change, leave.
Okay. All right.
And that's where you pay attention to the conversations that are occurring with it. That's going to be the key to this thing, because as Mayor mentioned, you know, the concern is for future as well too. Right now, the area that's in the dark green is the area owned by Game Fish and Parks, and they are currently using state park funds to cover the cost of maintaining that area right now. And so I don't know, you know, the conversation that's going to happen at the state level is that how much they can continue to fund into maintaining Rough Lock and Spearfish Falls as well too. So stay close to that conversation.
I'd sure like to see them do a better job, whether this thing's successful or not, as they move forward and define what they're talking about. Most of the people that have talked to me about it think it's going to start at the mouth of Spearfish Canyon. They really want to call it Little Spearfish Canyon Proposed State Park, because most people that I've talked to think it includes Bridal Veil and the whole canyon. So whatever they do, I think we ought to suggest that kind of really
Define it.
Define what it is.
Because even getting this map, you still don't even know what that is.
Unless you
And
know
it's
what
really,
you're looking at.
It's really wrapping around Savoy.
Yeah,
Is what it is.
It's above there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Good.
Land that they're trying to trade, even south of, Cold Mountain last street in on up, to the west.
yeah.
And the campgrounds, I heard, basically, we don't even know competition for bigger campgrounds up there. For small ones, for handling with the needs of. I'm sorry if it's this.
No, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Yeah, and they'll talk about the campgrounds in those public
I'm glad you
meetings.
had a public meetings for
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
From what you said, this was the first, Monday was the first introduction to the council and to the city. I have heard about this since, I believe, last legislative session. And maybe I missed it. Have there been regional, local meetings to talk about this prior to?
I believe with the county there was.
Okay.
I believe with the county. The governor at his address, making sure everything's okay. As his address in January is when it was announced. So it's just been almost a year now. But that was the first introduction. I mean, that was when we found out, is at the governor's address.
But last year, and then, because the way it was presented, you know, with Dune proposing some legislation already, I mean, they're halfway to 80% done with it already.
Right.
Where's the local input prior to that happening?
There was none.
And that
There
would
was
be
no local
a
input.
concern that I would have
Right.
with the process. Like, I think if they wanted to, you know, have a community behind it, they should have come to the community first and asked the community, instead of doing it and saying, oh, by the way, you people that live here, what do you think? Or this is what's going to happen.
And I know that there had to been back conversations because of the work that they did around Spearfish Falls. When the National Guard came in and did some work. The thing is that this is a relationship between the state and the feds, and that's where we're getting at. We catch wind of little pieces as well too, just like you do. But until we have something definitive, it's very hard to respond to it. And I'll tell you that the mayor is the one that asked Game Fish and Parks to come in and speak with the city council on it because of the concern and the questions that were being brought to us. And so, all right, that one will be, yes, Jim.
I talked to the council a little bit Monday night, but there's still a little confusion here. I think if you look at the green area, as you say, the state owns that now. That was a commitment by Governor Rounds back in 2004 to buy those 5 parcels. The comment about Rough Rock Falls being in pretty tough condition, which is true, and Homestake made their decision to go out of business in the early 2000s. They stopped the maintenance that they've done for all those years. They almost closed Rough Rock. They didn't do anything to help access to Spearfish Falls because the trail is still in such disrepair. So the state bought those, and we supported that for them to do exactly what they're doing, and they've done a great job at Savoy, a great job at Rough Rock Falls, and the little Spearfish weir, or intake. We expected the same approach with Spearfish Falls. So you need to take that small area, the state has owned it and has done well as we support it. The big change is the approach to take all of those Spearfish Canyon and combine it with that. And that's where the questions and I think resistance.
Well, and I would think that the question, even with the existing property, is still remains as well too, because even though Game Fish and Parks took the responsibility of maintaining it, what level of that maintenance is, and is there funding next year for maintaining that? Because that's what happens through the budget cycle with all of these things.
No. Back when they made their commitment, the question was, how are you going to own it and maintain it? At that time, they made a commitment, Secretary Cooper made a commitment, and then was successful to get about $640,000 transferred from the Homestake Whitewood Creek cleanup into an interest-bearing fund to do exactly that. And although they have used some other state park funds, the fundamental funding that's used for everything that's been done to date, out of that dedicated funding. So the question becomes, how much more do you need if you retain that? If you want to pick up Little Spearfish Canyon, it's obviously going to take.
See, and that is the big thing with this. We have no idea of that kind of analysis of where they've been. All we see right now is a site plan and a picture of that, essentially the Jackson Boulevard project. We have no information on Jackson Boulevard yet, other than we're going to have all these meetings, we're going to figure out what we're going to try to do that. It feels like that's where they're kind of at. They're trying to create whatever this partnership, whatever this relationship is, and they're going to go through that process. So, but pay attention to it. I think at this point in time where they're at, there will be that public input, public involvement from here throughout. So just watch for that stuff. I know everybody that's got an interest in it is going to stay close to it. So let me introduce really quickly, and we'll go to the bicycle infrastructure thing. Randy Divert is in the back of the room, trying to stay hidden, trying to stay quiet. Randy is our president of our Parks Board currently. He will be a county commissioner come January 1st. And Randy, as they talked about what the plans are for the Parks Board. Pam's on the Parks Board as well too, but I'll put it on to our citizen advisory. As far as the bicycle infrastructure and the rec path stuff, and where are we going with advancing that from some of those conversations?
Well, as most people know, we had a joint meeting or workshop with the council and our advisory board several weeks ago. And we had a discussion about several items, and one of them was about, as I mentioned earlier, the update of the trail system master plan. And listening tonight, it's given at least me a different perspective, that we not only have to look at it from a what we think it's used for, but also for a transportation corridor. So we're working currently on a scope of what that master plan update will include. We're working with staff on that. And I think that what we heard tonight and the discussion about Jackson will be part of that meeting, which is next Thursday morning at 7 a.m. in this room. What we're lacking is input from citizens coming to those meetings. So we hear more about what the citizens' concerned are, and the bicycle infrastructure is, we see that being addressed in Rapid City, but we don't address it to that degree here. And so, to me, that's a very interesting topic, and more input's needed for the advisory board to function. I'll add that we have 3 positions open on that board the first of the year, so we may have some change there too.
And one of the things to really note with that as well too is that we had just completed our strategic planning with the city as well too. As a part of that strategic plan, our action steps or our focus, these rec paths are very important to us. Our access for this quality of life is very important. And you can find that from our comprehensive plan that we've done all the way through there. The bicycle infrastructure shows up continuously within our documents. Our rec master plan currently is a 2005 document. I think we completed 5 phases in that document. There's 4 phases left in that. And then from 2005, the city has grown into the reserve, grown out into McGuigan. We're out at exit 17 now, and trying to catch up and bring those plans current are very important to us. And so the Parks Board is working very diligently on that, and they have met with the City Council a few times.
Nick left, but I do want to say, and speaking about Jackson, I don't think we've ever talked about Jackson Boulevard without discussing bicycle transportation, not rec path, but actual transportation. And we've had quite a few conversations with the university, because we know it's needed to get the students from the university to downtown and spread out through bicycle transportation. So that has always been a major part of the conversation, because, I mean, we're going to redo Jackson. It's going to look like that for 40 years. So we want to do it right. We got to look out 40 years. How is this going to serve us? And so I wish Nick were here, but that has been a part of every conversation when we're talking about Jackson.
We're talking about bicycles.
Bicycles, yeah, but Nick left.
Jeremy and I have had a lot of spirited conversations back and forth, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. You know, a lot of our roadways are narrow, and there's just really not room for an extra bike lane, designated bike lane. And I always say, vehicles first. I mean, that's our thought. We need to get people back and forth to and from. And I said, you know, we have a great rec path system to get us in a lot of places through the town, throughout town, in the outskirts, but not everywhere. Jackson is one of the streets here that actually may have some room to do something like that, and it's an opportunity to take a look at it. However, you know, you've had conversations with me saying, I don't necessarily like to be on that main road. I like to be on another one that's a little quieter. So we need some input on it, and we're definitely going to take a hard look at it on this project and see what we can do to help link the
consideration of running down Oliver too from Black Hill State is to run through Oliver, cross the bridge there on the less traveled street, get onto the north side of the creek at that point in time, or the west side, east side.
Yeah, you bet. So but Randy, you had something.
Well, Nick said when he left to make sure I asked all the questions that he wanted to ask, but he didn't share any of them with me. But one other consideration that in Jackson and all projects is the integration of the Safe Routes to School program. And since Central is no longer there, that's a less issue than it used to be. Obviously, it's an issue at state. But that's another thing that in our consideration of the update that we're working with is to look at that Safe Routes to School, and there's separate funding for that too.
Right. And I think that's why you've seen us come in with these new pedestrian crosswalks as well too. They're all pieces of that, trying to get that transportation pieces there so that that's non-vehicular.
And a lot of that's grant money too.
Right. So anything else on bicycle infrastructure right now? It's something that I think we continue to strive and move forward on, but we had such a long road to haul for it but it feels like we're getting closer and closer to having a good plan that actually functions. All right, long-term population trends, yes, sir?
Joe, could I back up to the canyon just for 1 second? I was out.
You could. Which hat are you wearing, Randy?
With none.
Oh.
When you see something like this presented, you look out in the crowd and there's like 5 people at the meetings. That's at the county commission level, at the city council level, I would suggest. And to be successful, you need involvement. We have new legislators coming on this in January as well. They're the key with the legislation on this. So the difference is made by people, not by just the decision makers at the city and the county level. So the more that come to meetings, the more input you have. And what I see in multiple counties is the attendance there is very diminished. And this is good attendance tonight compared to some of these meetings. So I encourage people to come and speak out.
All right. Long-term population trends. I've got charts for this. I don't have them with me right now, so everybody's going, yeah, right. Yeah, he's not going to go that far into it. We have looked very hard at this, and I think it was it 2 years ago, Randy, that we're out at the High Plains Heritage Center, I think. I think it was 2 years ago, and Joe was there as well too. In 99 years, we will hit 100,000 people in the city if our growth continues in the process that it's going. I will tell all of you that have not heard the story yet, though, is that since 1900, every 10-year census, we've generated about 24% in population growth in Spearfish. So it's about 2.5% every year since 1900. Because the question is that, well, do we want that? And it's like, well, how does it change? Because it was a long time before all of us here. Maybe Pat was still here in 1900, but no. but it was a long time back, and there is not been able to find exactly within those population trends exactly where all the people are coming from. We're bringing people in from just locals. It's I mean, part of the challenge we have with the growth of the city is that everybody has kids, and so now they need a home, and now they start their family, and we love that because that's how you build that community. But then we have everybody that discovers Spearfish as well, and then they're coming in here. We had a lot of conversation with North Dakota Oil was going very, very fast. How much of that it was impacting us? It had an impact to us, but it wasn't a definitive driving factor as to the people that were coming in. It was just one of the factors. We have individuals that are coming in quite a bit. We are a regional trade center within the western side of the state. When we did our retail trade study, 52,000 people shop here once a week. And then once a month, we have people that shop here. About 102,000 people shop in Spearfish. And note that once you get right around Sturgis, the line stops, and people from Rapid City, they'll come out for certain things, but Sturgis kind of goes whichever direction, how they got to Sturgis is where they go back to. And just kind of that philosophy with how people kind of follow their trails, ant trails. But we're a regional trade center, and I think that's part of it. Black Hills State brings in a lot of people. The hospital brings in a lot of people. We have 33 times as many specialists at our hospital system than we should for a town of 12,000 people. And so we watch those trends, and we look at that. It's I think when I got here 6 years ago, we had 700 potential platted lots that could be developed. That was 700 lots. We were generating 85 to 100 new homes a year. That was what? Do the math. 7 years worth of housing stock, and that's why you see all the conversations and all the struggles with planning and zoning here as well. Is that it's a reaction to everything that's occurring. The best thing that the city council can do and the plan commission can do is to try to help manage that so what comes in matches what we want to see. And that's the biggest challenge. When you ask the question as to, I've not heard anybody speak in favor of the Canyon Park. It was mentioned at the council meeting tonight, there are some business people that see that the state park will provide a benefit to the community. It's going to cause a change in the flow of people. And we think that the business side thinks that there could be a benefit to that growth of that park. So as we look at the long-term population trends, we have low years, we have high years, but on an average, it's 2.5% new population every year, 24 every 10-year census. That means that in 2020, we should see a total of about 2,500 new people in our city from 2010 to 2020. And where they come from is all over. In 1900, we had 1,100 people here. We're at 12,000 people now. The census for 2010 was 10,494. So, and trying to figure that out, we just completed a housing study this year. Because the big thing that we're talking about a lot is affordable housing. How are we going to be able to afford those families that come in to provide the services for the population we have? And that's a very challenging thing as well too, is trying to figure out how to do that. Because the single income families are very few and far between anymore. The world moves differently. There's so many double salaries out of homes now. And so we have to kind of figure out how can we provide that affordable housing? What can we do to accomplish that? So we watch that closely with the housing study. Our two biggest growth areas of population, 18 to 24. So these are the individuals that will be serving burgers. They'll be pumping gas, all of that nature. Our other largest sector.
I was like, who pumps gas in
Yeah, I know. I do, but nobody in my house will. But no. And then the second highest class, and they're right there in percentages, is the 55 to 70-year-olds. And so we're seeing them come out here, and they're settling in, and they're providing their income into the marketplace. And so I don't know if that touched on any of your question as far as the long-term population, but it's something that we take very seriously to try to understand how it impacts us.
When we think about, for example, downtown and cross-town traffic, and we think about our community growing, to 20 to 25,000 people, what does the city have in mind? As an example, you'll be downtown on Main at noon, and there is traffic from Jackson, on Main, backed up over a full block.
Yeah.
When you double our population,
yes,
what do we do? I mean, that's going to be a disaster. Because you can't, the way the city's kind of wedged in here, it doesn't seem like we have that traffic flow through there. What are we going to do?
There's about 3 or 4 different things we can talk on. I know with Jana, part of our comprehensive plan was the transportation master plan as to what we look at based upon that. And I know that Kyle, and I'll let them cover little pieces of that as well too. And Kyle mentioned this as well too. And Main Street's a good example. When Main Street was improved and rebuilt, they looked at the growth of the population as to what they were going to expect on that street. And they do the best. I mean, come on, we're talking about a crystal ball. You don't keep the snow brushed off of it, it doesn't always work. So, and so we do the best with that. But you want to go into a little bit of the master transportation stuff?
Sure. Well, the transportation master plan, of all things, it includes many elements, namely, the future major street network, and it goes beyond. These are just the section lines. It helps us identify those future routes, both collector and arterial streets, where the future streets extending, so we don't wind up with situations where we have Jackson Boulevard, a major arterial, finally dying into a residential park. I mean, obviously, it's one of the changes that have been made in the last 10 years, so that's how the transportation master plan. But back to I appreciate your thought about where's all the cars going to go. I think in 10 to 15 years, we are going to see new destinations be created outside of the central core. So for example, let's say in the exit 8 or the exit 10 or even exit 17, you will see some shifting of employment centers, residential, maybe some additional, retail opportunities. So instead of working downtown, maybe your office is at exit 10 and I-90, and there's a grocery store right around the corner. You're going to grab a thing out of their deli for lunch. So the whole dynamic, it's not going to be the same trip generation coming downtown, because right now our focus of our commercial core still is basically, from middle school, then past Jackson, or I'm sorry, past Maine a little bit downtown, and then the other core is exit 14. So you'll see more of these sort of service cores coming online. That'll help change, so you're not going to have as much if there's a lot more traffic. Then, in theory, they're out there too. The other part of growth too is, how do we manage growth? Because I think there are some models. Some of them are as dramatic as what's been going on the West Coast for years in growth management, in which a city draws a big line around inside of its municipal boundaries and says, these are the growth areas. If you, landowner, are beyond that line, then you have to wait until water and sewer gets out to you. So you can take the market and you can squeeze one end of it, meaning the supply of land for future residential growth. The other place you can squeeze the market is maybe in your business sector, and I don't think we want that. We want continued growth and economic development and new jobs. New jobs bring people, so it's it's kind of a hard, it's like grabbing a tiger by the tail. You have to understand, where is it going? What are we trying to accomplish? And, look at a lot of communities in South Dakota. It's just an Aberdeen. That town is almost exactly the same size as it was when I lived there in 1984. And they have moderate progress in their economic development, by and large, but they're an ag core. So I think there's no such thing as standing still unless maybe you're Aberdeen.
I don't know if there's a thing as standing still, but because they've been doing a lot of changing.
Something
else.
And I would right now.
Some of the things that we're seeing as well too is that the downtown continues to evolve. When Walmart put the 24-hour center out there, it changed some of the dynamics of the business of downtown. What we are starting to feel, and Jackson and Maine is a good example where they tore down the building and they're getting ready to bring in plans as to what they want to put there. I believe we're going to see the redevelopment in that downtown area that puts more people within the walking distance of downtown as well too, so that they can walk back and forth. It feels like with exit 14, when that bridge moves and they get done with that project, I believe there's already tires being kicked on the other side of the interstate away from Walmart about the land and what is the good use for that land. Because that flow of that traffic is going to be so much different that I think we'll see the growth out there as well too.
Junction 85.
Do what?
Junction 85 too.
Yeah, and we see the Highway 85 going toward Deadwood. It's just percolating. We see Highway 85 going north to Belfouche as there's movement up there. And don't know when it all triggers, but it comes at some point in time.
Well, what I've seen is a reactive process on traffic rather than proactive to a certain extent. If you go back when the interstate was put in and the traffic came through Main Street, we had a lot of traffic through town. The interstate went in and the traffic downtown diminished dramatically. Then we had the big change after growth that the bridge on Hillsview was put in, Utah Street was put in. That made a big difference in traffic patterns. Then we had Exit 8 constructed. So what I'm arriving at is we will react to it and we'll make it work, because that's the history of this community.
Yeah, and I think people are just so tolerant of some of those delays and everything else. You joke about the rush hour for Spearfish, of course, 8 to 8:05 in the morning and 5 to 5:05 in the afternoon. The tolerance for us waiting at a light or anything is so much different than these larger cities. that will cause people to start responding differently as well too.
I'm going to throw out an example of growing up in Sturgis, and really topographically they're restricted very similarly. You have Junction Avenue and the interstate. So if you want to get one direction or the other, you took one of those two. Otherwise, you're in a neighborhood and it's not efficient. They reach that same point where I don't want to use Junction, it's too busy. I'm out here close to the interstate. I don't want to get on the interstate. They put that service road along the interstate. My house is right by there. I never, in my lifetime, it hadn't crossed my mind to put a road there. That's their next alternative route. You know, you could see something as creative as that next to the interstate. I really don't want to get on the interstate, but you know, now I've got this alternative route, whatever. I mean, I'm sure, I agree with Andy, you're going to see responses to it. That plan's just going to continue to morph and morph.
Well, and for example, we just completed a very comprehensive utility study of the Highway 85 corridor to try to figure out what are the major utility routes they follow along that future street network. And you know, as time goes on, you know, as we are approving plats and new property boundaries, we acquire right of way at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're actually right now, it's hard to believe, I guess the first leg or the first corridor of a parallel arterial street of Highway 85 has already been dedicated. So to think that there is more street networks east of 85 that will, you know, be coming online, it's exciting, a little scary, and I just shake my head, but now's the time we have to do it.
Okay. Anything else on that? Yes, sir.
I'll give you a benchmark. When I graduated from Reed in 1947, still 7,500 people. Rapid City was a little less than 20,000 we managed to grow.
Yeah.
And aside to that, our challenge at Reed, you know, we used to scrimmage Spearfish in Denver, but that's about it. Rapid City was a big competitor. And our goal in Reed always was beat them once in football, twice in basketball, 3 times in the alley after.